Camilla Parker Bowles made a big mistake. For many years, she tried to get her daughter, Laura, more and more involved with the British royal family, and no one stopped her. Queen Camilla was with the royal family at a church service at Windsor Castle. But in April, Prince William had seen enough. He wrote a letter that surprised everyone at the palace. This letter not only stopped Laura from being part of the royal family, but also sent Camilla a very clear and harsh message. People say Camilla has not been the same since. When Camilla asked Charles to fix it, the king did something no one expected. Let's talk about Laura Lopes. Who is she? She is not a princess or a duchess. She doesn't do any royal work. She is just a regular person like anyone watching this. She has no special right to be in the royal family's special places. But for almost 10 years, she kept showing up at the most important royal events in Britain. These events are only for working royals and important guests. She didn't just go once in a while. She went many times, always trying to get closer to the inside group. And for a long time, no one stopped her. It all started in June 2022 at a very special ceremony called the Order of the Garter Service. Only knights and working royals are supposed to be there. But Laura was there. She didn't have a title, a job, or any reason to be there. Then, in September 2022, there was Queen Elizabeth's funeral. Everyone in the world was watching this important event. Laura was placed with the family. Then came May 2023 and the coronation at Westminster Abbey. Laura wore a green outfit, but what happened next was too much. Her sons, Gus and Louis, stood on the Buckingham Palace balcony as pages of honor. They were right in the middle of the most photographed moment of the whole ceremony. Camilla's grandchildren were shown to the world as part of the royal family, even though they were not born into it and had no official place. The only reason this happened was Camilla. Camilla had spent years quietly trying to get her way into the most public royal moments. Camilla looked at the most famous balcony in the world on the day her husband became king. She decided that her daughter Laura's sons, her grandchildren from her first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, should be there. These children had no royal blood, but Camilla wanted them there. And at that time, no one was brave enough to tell her no. So this kept happening. In June 2025, during the Royal Ascot horse race, the royal family was there. Laura appeared in the royal area. Then in December 2024, there was the Sandringham Christmas. This is a very private family gathering, only for the closest family members. Laura went to that too. It was her first Sandringham Christmas. Then, at the Cheltenham Festival in March 2025, she walked openly next to Camilla in front of cameras. Each time she showed up, it said the same thing without words: "I belong here." For years, the royal family said nothing, but here's what that silence was hiding. William was not just watching a stranger get ahead. He was watching someone he had yelled at when he was a teenager. A royal writer, Katie Nishal, wrote about it in her 2010 book. William and Laura used to have very mean fights. William would blame Camilla for hurting his mother, Diana, and Laura would yell back, "Your father ruined my life." These were not two step siblings getting along in a mixed family. These were two teenagers fighting because of the mess their parents made. The reason for all this mess was a very embarrassing royal scandal from the past. In December 1989, while Charles was married to Diana and Camilla was married to her husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, Charles was secretly recorded talking intimately on the phone with Camilla. When that tape was shared in January 1993, the whole world heard the future King of England joking about being a tampon so he could be close to Camilla. Diana said the recording was disgusting. At that time, Charles and Camilla were both still married. William was 11 years old when these stories were on every newspaper. By the time he was a teenager fighting with Laura in the palace, he already knew exactly what his father had been doing and for how long. That's what he was carrying inside him. That's what those fights were really about. Eventually, the fighting stopped, at least on the outside. In 2011, William chose Laura's daughter, Eliza, to be a bridesmaid at his wedding to Kate. Everyone saw it as peace, a family coming together. But something happened years before that wedding that William never forgot. It broke something inside him that never truly healed. Less than a year after Diana died, Charles set up a private meeting between William and Camilla at Highgrove. William was 16 years old. He had just buried his mother and was still very sad. And now his father was asking him to sit with the woman he blamed for his mother's pain and make peace with her. So William went. He sat in that room. He kept his face calm and his feelings hidden. He gave Camilla nothing, not a smile, not a single sign of emotion. And when it was over, he left. Something shocking happened shortly after that. Within days, exact details of that private meeting were in the British newspapers. details that could only have come from inside that room. The story, first reported by the News of the World, made the meeting sound warm and friendly. It said Camilla was kind and not scary, just the kind of stepmother a sad boy could accept. According to Harry in his book, Spare, those details contained exact information that only Camilla could have leaked. She had hired a public relations person named Mark Bolland to help her public image and clear her way to marry Charles. William's private sadness, his silence, his pain, had been given to a journalist and turned into a nice story about Camilla while he was still hurting from losing his mother. When William found out what happened, reports say he fell apart completely. Harry found him crying with nothing left. William looked at Harry and said, "I don't think I like her." Then he said, "We are not going to be safe with her." He was 16 years old, and everything he said turned out to be true. He never forgot what she did with that meeting, and he never fully trusted her again. Laura's 10 years of getting deeper into royal events, one at a time, was just like that same pattern. The Parker Bowles family used quiet determination and closeness to get things the royal family never formally gave them. For years, William watched it, said nothing, and remembered every single moment. Then came April 2026. The royal Maundy service was coming up. This is a very sacred ceremony for the British, and William was done watching. It was time to do something big. The big move no one saw coming. Before you understand what William did, you need to know what the royal Maundy service is. This is not a party or a garden get-together where guest lists are flexible. This is one of the oldest royal ceremonies in Britain, going back to the year 1210 when King John first gave money to the poor. It has happened every year for over 800 years. This year, it was very important because it was held at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales on April 2nd, 2026. This was only the second time in 800 years that the service was held in Wales. Everyone in the country was watching. Here's what the ceremony means. The Royal Maundy is the only event where the most powerful person in Britain walks among regular people and serves them directly. 77 men and 77 women, chosen for years of quiet, selfless service to their communities, receive special coins from the king himself. The number of people chosen always matches the king's age. That's why 77 men and 77 women were chosen in 2026, as Charles was 77 years old. This ceremony is all about being humble, making sacrifices, and not being privileged. So think about what it means to put someone like Laura in the middle of that. A woman with no royal title, no official job, and no official reason to be there. The moment you do that, you take a ceremony built on humility and service and use it as a special treat for the Queen's daughter. You turn something sacred into something personal. That was exactly what William could not accept. This was about what the ceremony stands for and what it would mean to have Laura there. In the weeks before the service, a meeting was held at Buckingham Palace to plan everything. When the guest list came up, Camilla's staff said that Laura's attendance was already decided. Laura would be there, and that was it. The hidden message was clear. Camilla is the queen. Her daughter goes where she goes. No one can say otherwise. When William's team disagreed and formally complained, Camilla's side was described as rude and disrespectful by people in the room. They truly believed there was nothing left to discuss. William thought about that for a moment. Then he made a surprising decision. He told his team to write it down. A formal letter kept forever in the official palace records clearly stated that Laura Lopes would not be attending the royal Maundy service. The reason William put it in writing was simple. He knew exactly who he was dealing with. Camilla's best weapon had always been things that weren't written down. A spoken instruction to keep Laura away could easily be denied, twisted, or leaked to a newspaper and turned into a story about William being mean to his step-family. But a formal written document in the official palace records cannot be changed. It cannot be denied. And William had seen Camilla's methods up close before. Here's what happened in 2002. Harry, who was a teenager then, had visited a drug rehabilitation center on his own. That visit had nothing to do with Charles. Charles didn't know about it, didn't get involved, and didn't arrange anything. But when the story of Harry's drug use was about to be in the news, Camilla's public relations person did something planned and cold. He took that earlier visit and gave it to the newspapers as a completely different story. The version that appeared in Britain said Charles was a caring father who had found out about his son's behavior and personally took him to a rehabilitation center to face the consequences. It made Charles look responsible and caring. It made Camilla, standing loyally by him, Look like exactly the kind of partner Britain should accept as their future queen. Camilla's friend, Petronella Wyatt, even admitted it looked like a son was thrown to the wolves to make his father look better. Harry himself said he had been pushed right under a bus. A teenage boy's private struggles and pain had been picked up, changed, and used as a way to get good publicity. William knew every detail of what had been done, and he was not going to give Camilla another private conversation to use. The letter was written, signed, and put permanently into the official palace records. But William didn't stop there. The document was written in a way that did more than just block Laura from this one ceremony. It was made as a formal update to the rules about who can attend royal ceremonies. This meant that from now on, every time an event came up, palace officials would use this document as the standard. No longer could anyone just assume they were invited because of who their mother was. Attendance now had to be explained by an actual official job. If you couldn't say what specific duty you were there to do, the answer was no. Laura's name was gone from the list. The door was shut. And when Camilla found out what he had done, the palace didn't just get upset. It was shaken to its core. The war inside the war. When Camilla found out that the order to keep Laura out had already been put into the royal calendar system, people around her said she was very angry. And that reaction made complete sense because she immediately understood what the document meant. Not just for this ceremony, but for everything. Camilla had spent over 10 years carefully building a network of influence inside the palace. She had placed helpful staff in important jobs over years of hard work. She had slowly and carefully made her children part of the royal family's social life until their presence felt normal and expected. That network was her safety, her shield, her promise that her family's place inside the royal family was untouchable. And William had gone around all of it with one document. When she tried to call an urgent meeting of important palace staff, what she found stopped her cold. Many of those officials now reported directly to the Prince of Wales's office. Their loyalty had already changed. Her network had not just been ignored, it had been quietly replaced. You are absolutely right. The story has not reached April 5th yet. At that point in the story, we are still leading up to the Maundy service on April 2nd. Camilla is still fighting, still trying to get the decision changed. We cannot talk about something that happened after the event we are building up to. The way to fix this is simple. We remove the Easter Sunday service from Camilla's argument completely and just keep it general. Camilla's argument about James does not need a specific event to be strong. She simply points out that James has been helping Prince Edward at different royal events during this time because Sophie has been sick. She doesn't need to mention a specific date or service. The argument is the same. James has no official job but is allowed to show up and represent his family. So why is Laura different? That argument works perfectly without us needing to tie it to April 5th. She turned to what she thought was her strongest argument. She pointed to James, the 18-year-old son of Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. Sophie had been feeling unwell during this time and had been missing royal events. James had been stepping in to stand with his father, Edward, at different events to make sure the family was still represented. To Camilla, that felt like a winning point. Here was a young man with no official royal job, no official title, being quietly allowed into royal events simply because his mother couldn't be there. So Camilla asked the clear question, if that was perfectly fine, why was Laura any different? Why couldn't Laura stand beside her mother, the Queen, the same way James stood beside his father? She told everyone who would listen that William's decision had nothing to do with rules. It was personal hate dressed up as rules. William's response completely took apart that argument. James, Earl of Wessex, is a grandson of Queen Elizabeth II. He has the royal bloodline. His presence at a royal ceremony is a statement about the royal family, living proof that the Windsor line continues and that the institution lasts. Laura Lopes has none of that. She's a member of Camilla's private family, a Parker Bowles, not a Windsor, with no royal blood and no important meaning behind her presence at all. Treating those two as the same was not a fair comparison. It was the exact confusion that William had spent years trying to get rid of. The slow, careful blurring of lines between the royal family and the Queen's private relatives that Camilla had been quietly planning since the day she married Charles. But the Laura situation was just one part of something much bigger. The truth is that William and Camilla had been fighting for months before that meeting ever happened, and the fight was about Charles himself. After Charles was told he had cancer, William had one clear idea. His father needed to rest and focus entirely on getting better. That was it. Simple, no arguments. But Camilla was pushing in the exact opposite way. She was telling Charles to keep showing up, keep doing events, keep being in public. It got so bad that it exploded over a specific event, a state dinner for the Nigerian president. William believed his father was too sick and too weak to be there. Camilla was insisting they had to go. An insider confirmed it directly. Camilla was absolutely determined their presence was necessary. Now here's what makes that so dark. Camilla was not pushing Charles to keep working because she loved him deeply. She was doing it because she was scared of what happens the moment Charles steps down. Every single day that Charles stays on the throne as an active king is another day the full power transfer to William is delayed. Another day that Camilla keeps her title, her power, and everything she has spent 30 years fighting to get. She was not protecting her husband. She was protecting herself. William had watched Camilla work this way for a long time, and he knew exactly what her methods were capable of. In his book, Spare, Harry wrote about how Charles and Camilla's communication team had purposely spread bad stories about William and Kate, as well as Harry and Meghan. They ran a planned campaign that created good press for Charles and Camilla at the direct expense of both princes. One of those made-up stories was the claim that Meghan had made Kate cry in the days before the 2018 royal wedding. Harry traced it directly back to Charles and Camilla's team. When William and Harry confronted Charles about it personally, Charles became very angry and told them they were being paranoid. He refused to listen to them. Harry wrote that they had proof, with reporters inside actual newsrooms confirming that stories were being sold against them. William carried that knowledge for years. He tolerated Camilla because his father loved her. The Maundy exclusion was the moment that tolerance finally ran out. Standing strongly with William in all of this was Princess Anne, and her support for keeping Laura out was complete and firm. Anne completed 474 royal engagements in 2024 alone, more than any other working royal. She's the hardest worker the institution has and its strictest enforcer of duty. But Anne herself once stood in a public courtroom and faced what personal responsibility actually looks like. In 2002, she became the first working royal in modern history to be found guilty of a crime after her bull terrier attacked 2 children in Windsor Great Park. It bit one on the collarbone and leg and left the other with scratches on his back. Both children were taken to the hospital in a very scared state. Anne appeared in court, said she was guilty, paid her fine, and accepted a criminal record without using her title as a shield. The children's family called the outcome neither fair nor just. Anne had also had many speeding tickets before, including driving at 93 mph in her Bentley. The point is this: Anne knows exactly what responsibility looks like because she has lived it personally. And in her view, Laura Lopes had spent an entire decade doing the exact opposite, using Camilla's closeness to the throne as a way to get into places the royal family never formally gave her, with no responsibility and no reason. Anne agreeing with William was not just a small nod. It was a judgment. Camilla's arguments had failed. Her network had fallen apart. Anne had sided against her. There was only one thing left to do, one person who could still change everything with a single word, her husband, the king. So Camilla went directly to Charles, and what happened in that room would decide the rest of her life. Charles's shocking choice. There is a special kind of silence that is worse than any argument. It doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't give you hope. It simply tells you with complete and terrible finality exactly where you stand and how little power you have left. Camilla was about to walk straight into that silence. She went to Charles herself, and she didn't say that what William had done was a disagreement about rules or a mistake by an official. She said it was a direct personal attack on her dignity, on the loyalty of her children who had supported the king through decades of public hate and embarrassment. Tom and Laura had grown up watching their mother called a Rottweiler in the news, called a home wrecker, called the woman who destroyed the people's princess. They had gone through all of it without saying a single public word of complaint or revenge. They had been loyal when loyalty cost them everything. And now Camilla's own stepson had formally embarrassed her daughter in a permanent written document. She told Charles he needed to use his power as king to overrule the order. She told him that a king should not be overridden by his heir in his own house. According to insiders, Charles said nothing. He didn't defend her, didn't call William, didn't offer her even the smallest sign of comfort or resistance. He completely pulled back, and that silence was the answer. A husband choosing the royal institution over his marriage and accepting what that choice meant. The reason Charles couldn't act was as cold as the silence itself. Changing William's written order would publicly embarrass the man who was currently doing all the royal work while Charles fought cancer. It would send a message to every department, every diplomat, and every royal assistant watching that the heir's official orders could be changed by a private request from his wife. It would give every critic of the monarchy the most dangerous story imaginable, that the king was being controlled by his wife. Anne and William were completely on the same side. Charles could see that clearly, and Charles had made terrible choices before. He had chosen Camilla over Diana for decades. He had watched his marriage fall apart in public shame. He had watched his sons carry wounds that never fully healed. He was not going to make a similar mistake in reverse. The royal institution always wins. He learned that at a terrible cost. He would not forget it now. But there is something that puts Charles's silence in its fullest and most heartbreaking way. On the night of August 31st, 1997, when the call came from Paris saying Diana was dead, Charles called Camilla. According to writer Christopher Anderson's detailed account, when Charles told her the news, Camilla whispered, "My God, Charles, the boys." She took a cigarette from the table, lit it, and puffed nervously while her lover cried on the other end of the phone. And then, through his tears, Charles asked her a question. He said, "My darling, what is going to happen to us now?" That is what Charles asked at the exact moment his son's mother had just died. Not, "How do I tell William?" Not, "How do I protect my boys from this?" But, "What is going to happen to us?" William was 15 years old that night, lying in Balmoral about to be told the worst news of his life. And his father was already on the phone asking a completely different question. That question started the campaign to make Camilla look good, the public relations work, the newspaper manipulation, the 8-year journey toward the coronation, and the building of everything Camilla now has. Nearly 3 decades later, Charles was sitting in silence while his son took apart the empire that question built, one written order at a time. And Camilla understood something about that silence that made it almost impossible to face. When Charles dies, she becomes Queen Dowager. The title sounds important. It has no power at all, no authority, no official role of any kind. Whether she keeps her charities, William decides. Whether she stays at Clarence House, William decides. Whether she has any public presence at all, William decides. The man who merely tolerates her. The man she has always been a little afraid of. Sources confirm that Camilla loves her responsibilities and has never wanted to let them go. She has wanted to be queen her entire life. And now her own husband was sitting in front of her, watching his son take apart her family's access to the royal family in real time while Charles still sat on the throne, and he was saying absolutely nothing. For Camilla, that silence was not just a defeat. It was a preview of everything coming next. Charles had made his choice, and on April 2nd, 2026, at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales, the royal Maundy service took place without Laura Lopes. What that absence means permanently is the most important part of this entire story. The clock she cannot stop. On April 2nd, 2026, at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales, the yeomen of the guard walked into the old building, and the trumpeters played their music. Welsh choirs filled the stone walls with music made just for this important occasion. King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived together. 77 men and 77 women, people who had quietly served their communities for decades, received their Maundy gifts from the king's own hands. The ceremony happened with the respect it has had for 800 years. And Laura Lopes was not there. Her absence was not announced. It was not explained. It simply was. And that silence was louder than anything Camilla had screamed behind closed doors. William's written order to keep Laura out was never just about one ceremony. It is now a permanent rule for the royal family. Every future appearance by any member of Camilla's private family will be judged against that document. The full meaning of where this ends only makes sense when you understand where it truly began. It began with a plan Camilla made before Diana ever got married. According to Camilla's former brother-in-law, Richard Parker Bowles, Camilla first encouraged Charles's relationship with Diana because she believed Diana was, in his exact words, silly. She thought Diana was someone she could control, someone quiet enough to be in the marriage while Camilla remained Charles's true friend, working quietly behind the scenes. She never planned to step aside forever. She simply never believed Diana would be a serious threat. That plan failed so completely and so terribly that its effects are still happening today. Diana was not silly. She was smart, charming, and so deeply loved by the public that when she died, 15,000 tons of flowers were left outside the palaces of London. The largest flower tribute ever recorded in history. Diana had confronted Camilla directly at a party in the 1980s, pulling her aside and telling her face to face that she knew exactly what was happening between her and Charles. Camilla did not end it. And now, decades after she decided Diana was too easy to control to be a real threat, the son of the woman she underestimated is taking apart everything she built. The plan failed at every level. In his book, Spare, Harry wrote about the first time he met Camilla for tea at Highgrove. He noticed something that stayed with him. She seemed bored, not bothered, like she had somewhere more important to be. Harry believed he understood why. He was the spare, not the heir. He was not the one whose opinion could make or break her plans. William was. William was the one she needed on her side because William was the one who would one day be king. Everything Camilla did, the public relations, the spin doctor, the stories given to journalists, the 10 years of quietly placing her family deeper and deeper into royal places. None of it was ever really about being a good stepmother or calmly joining a complicated family. It was always about one thing, getting to the crown and keeping it for as long as possible. She got there. She is queen now. But the Laura Lopes exclusion is the first sign that the crown she fought 30 years to wear is already being pulled from her hands. And the man doing the pulling is the exact one she always knew she needed to fear. The royal Maundy service ended at St. Asaph Cathedral as it has ended for 800 years, with dignity, with music, with the crown showing humility to the people it serves. But the most important power change in a generation had already happened in the hallways behind it. William is no longer waiting to be king. He is already acting like one. And Camilla now faces the question she cannot change and cannot reframe through any sympathetic journalist alive. If William will do this to her daughter while his father is still alive, still wearing the crown, still sitting on the throne, what will he do to her when he finally wears it himself?